pandemic by the World Health Organization. In Kenya, we recorded our first case of the virus on the 13th of March this year, and we were one of the first countries in sub-Saharan Africa to take early measures to contain the spread of the virus. We are all familiar with these measures, and I think to a large extent it is these measures that we put in at such an early time that have given us this trajectory of our curve that we are seeing. In his last address on COVID-19 on the 6th of June 2020, His Excellency the President, on advice from the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus Disease, or the NERC, lifted some of the containment measures imposed on Kilifi County, Old Town Mombasa, and Eastleigh in Nairobi, but largely retained most of the other measures. Those retained with adjustments include the dusk to dawn curfew, which was initially observed from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., but relaxed to start from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Additional interventions targeting hotspot areas of virus spread have also been put in place. Over the past several weeks, as we test more samples, the numbers of positive cases have been on the rise. At the moment, almost all counties have now recorded a case of coronavirus, with 41 out of the 47 counties already registering at least one case. And it won't be long before all the 47 counties will have registered a COVID-19 case. So while we may be moving along our trajectory as this virus spreads, and we expect that our curve is going to rise, we also feel that clearly laxity on the part of our people in adhering to the containment measures is aiding the spread of the virus. Even with the prevailing situation of COVID-19 infection in the country, majority of the Kenyans have been discussing the possibility of government opening up the economy. This discussion is unavoidable. We have to discuss that too, because the pandemic has created a situation where we have to balance between lives, saving lives, and saving livelihoods. The containment measures have resulted in discomfort and pain to our people. The economy has been hit hard, with many Kenyans losing their means of livelihoods. The circumstances we find ourselves in as a country are certainly unusual, but this is because we are not dealing with a normal enemy. Individual responsibility and ramping up of preparedness are key interventions that must be at the topmost of our response list. You will recall that counties have been given a target of establishing a 300-bed isolation capacity by His Excellency the President. As all counties work towards achieving this requirement, we must also raise our level of individual compliance with the containment measures. We are at a point as a nation where we must pull ourselves up, and we must continue to make sacrifices in adhering to the containment measures, in taking personal responsibility to ensure that we are not spreading or facilitating the spread of the virus. And this we can achieve by following the measures that have been put in place, the wearing of masks in public, hand washing and hygiene, social and physical distancing, avoiding gatherings. This is where we must take and increase our responsibility in those areas. The government and the Ministry of Health have put their best foot forward in fighting this pandemic, but it requires the citizenry also to play their part and take that responsibility. And together I think we can beat this pandemic. The matters we are discussing here are weighty and must dominate our discussions in aiding the government in coming up with balanced measures on the way forward. In the past 1 week, we have seen several developed countries such as USA, Australia, South Korea, Germany, and others opening up their economies sooner than when it should have been, and then suddenly experiencing major spikes in COVID-19 infections, and thereafter hurriedly again imposing measures to close down the economies. We must strike a balance in terms of how we would like to see our country move forward and avoid the risk of experiencing an upsurge of cases. With all the effort and work that has been done in bringing us to the point where we are today, if we act without taking into consideration those balanced measures, we could very easily erode the gains that we have made. It is better to be safe than sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now move to the statistics of the day. Today we have recorded the highest number of positive cases since the pandemic struck in our country. The highest number. We tested 3,591 samples over the last 24 hours, and of these, 307 returned positive. This number now pushes our caseload of those confirmed positive to 6,673. Out of a sample size of 173,355 that we have tested thus far. Today's number consists of 289 Kenyans and 18 foreigners. 215 are males, 92 are females. The youngest is 1 year old, the oldest is 81. In terms of counties, Nairobi leads with 154, Mombasa 38, Machakos 33, Kiambu 20, Narok 20, Kajiado 14, Busia 10, Kericho 4, Makueni and Nakuru 5 cases each, Kilifi, Kisumu, Kitui and Uasin Gishu 1 case each. The distribution of cases by sub-counties: in Nairobi, the 154 cases are in Dagoretti North 34, Kibra 22, Embakasi Central and Langata 18 cases each, Starehe 17, Westlands 14, Embakasi South 10, Embakasi West 7, Kamkunji 5, Dagoretti, Makadara and Madare 2 cases each, Embakasi Central, Roysambu and Ruaraka 1 case each. In Mombasa, the cases are in Vita 22, Likoni 10, Changamwe 5 and Nyali 1. In Machakos, 32 cases were in Athi River, and 1 case in Yata. In Kiambu, Ruiru had 4 cases, Kiambu Town 6, Kabete and Thika 3 cases each, and Kiamba 2 cases, Juja and Lari 1 case each. In Narok, all 20 cases are from Narok North. In Kajiado, the cases are from Kajiado Central 7, Kajiado North 5, and Kajiado East 2. In Busia, the cases are in Teso North 6 and Matayos 4. In Kericho, the 4 cases are from Aina Moi. In Makueni, the 5 cases are in Kibwezi East, and in Nakuru, the 5 cases are from Naivasha, 3, Nakuru East and Nakuru West, 1 case each. In Kilifi, the 1 case is in Kilifi North, and in Kisumu, the 1 case is in Kisumu Central. Kitui and Uasin Gishu also have 1 case each. The one in Kitui is from Kitui Central, and the one from Uasin Gishu is from Tarbo. We are also delighted to inform you that today we have discharged 50 patients from the various hospitals where they were receiving medical care, bringing to 2,089 the total number of recoveries. We want to thank our healthcare workers for their continued dedication and the achievements that we are making in recoveries. Sadly, though, we have all lost 1 more patient to the disease, bringing to 149 the number of Kenyans who have succumbed to this disease so far. We send our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of the departed. Finally, as I conclude, I want to make a special appeal to each one of us to take personal responsibility in this fight against coronavirus disease. I want to share with you an experience that I had yesterday. Before I came up here to the podium to make this address, there was a gentleman who was sitting in my office and had been sitting in my office for quite a while waiting to see me. I didn't have a chance to see this elderly gentleman before the brief, but when I went back, I called him in and spoke to him. And I asked him what it was that brought him there. And he told me, I have come here as a Kenyan. I have come because I want to give you a message as a leader in the ministry. I wanted to see somebody in leadership. He told me that when he came over to the reception here, he was asked, what is it that you want? He said, I want to see somebody in leadership. And he was asked by the guards whether he could tell them what the issue was. And he told them, no, I have this issue that I want to talk to one of the leaders. Anyway, he ended up in my office, and I asked him what the issue was. And he told me, I come from a place called Ruaka. I think we all know Ruaka towards on Limuru Road. And he told me, I came to you because what I'm seeing there worries me very much. I have seen that people have disregarded all the containment measures that have been put in place, and especially the containment measures regarding transportation and travel. And he told me the matatus there are filling up people beyond capacity, not following the measures, and that he was very concerned because he was in one of those matatus with his wife the other day, and they were both very worried. I was quite impressed, I must say, that I could see that this man had traveled far. He didn't seem like a person of means, but for him to come all that way and wait and give me this message, I felt it is important that I share it with Kenyans. And I told him I wish most of us as Kenyans were like you, that we were concerned and would do something about it. My appeal, therefore, again, is to all Kenyans, all of us, to take personal responsibility. We are at a very bad point as far as this pandemic is concerned, We are seeing the numbers rise. They will probably rise even further. We may be on that incline towards our peak. We have done the most that we can, and we'll continue to do that as a government and as a ministry to be able to contain that spread so that it does not overwhelm our health systems. But it will take more than that, and it requires personal responsibility by all Kenyans. At this particular time, we take that extra mile to protect ourselves and protect others, so that when those numbers come and the surge comes, our facilities will be able to deal with and manage those numbers that are sure going to rise of those people who will be looking for care in our facilities. The huge numbers we are continuing to record can only be halted if we cooperate with the government by strictly adhering to the containment measures we have advised. Maintaining social and physical distancing, washing our hands with soap and running water, wearing masks at all times in public places, and avoiding all social and political gatherings. This has become our mantra, and we will continue to preach this. I thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kenna from People Daily. Just wanted to know, maybe either from the technical person and all that, in terms of health workers, the number affected, in terms of those who have been affected with the disease, and as a result, they have died, and what were their conditions, and if possible, the regions where. Thank you.
I'm Brian Otieno from KTN News. I have three short questions. The first one, it regards home-based care. How many people are on home-based care, and what are some of the challenges you've observed with that method? Okay, the second one is about contact tracing. It still appears to be an issue. What's the big issue about contact tracing? And then the third one is on reopening the economy. A few weeks ago, you issued some guidelines to hotel and restaurant operators. What's the status update? Do we know how many have been tested and how many have been cleared so far to operate?
Okay. Helen Aura from NTV. As a country, what is the integrity of our testing process thus far? Reason being, the Health Committee met today to deliberate one of our Member of Parliament's, the Kiambu Member of Parliament's late mother, where one of the tests from Lancet came out positive and two other tests conducted came out negative from different laboratories. Where's the integrity here as a country?
Naitwa Haemba kutoka Ebro TV. Tafadhali naomba kujua waziri, mwezi wa Juni tuliweza kurekodi maambukizi mengi tangia janga la corona kuweza kuingia nchini Kenya. Naomba tu kujua iwapo mwezi huu wa Julai, tunapoanza mwezi wa Julai, huenda tukarekodi visa vingapi, na tunapoendelea hadi mwezi wa Agosti tunaweza kupokea visa vingapi approximate?
Nancy Okware from KBC. My first question is on the testing capacity in the country. Yesterday you told us that we have 28 testing facilities, meaning that all the counties do not have the facilities to test, and most of them are forced to rely from, going to other counties for testing. So is it possible that the other counties that are yet to report cases, we could be having cases there, but they are yet to be detected because of the inadequate facilities? And my final question is related to the one that was asked about the home-based care. So far, how many people have recovered, those who are undergoing the protocol? The last time you spoke, there were about 50 recoveries. Do we have more recoveries from that protocol? And those under the program, how are they gelling into it? Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Ben from K24, and I have two questions. My first question is, what is our patient health worker ratio in as far as testing is concerned? And my second question is, for example, for instance, in today's statistics, the 3,591 cases tested in the last 24 hours. Did you collect these cases in the last 24 hours, or did you collect them prior to the testing? And when did you collect them, and where from did you collect them? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Quite a number of questions here. A number of them are quite technical and require some statistics. Those ones I will have the DG perhaps respond to them. I can see there were issues on home-based care. DG, you can address the questions on home-based care, including numbers for restaurants and how many have been tested, how many are opening. Let's start with Kenna of People Daily. Your question was with regard to healthcare workers, and you wanted to know how many have been affected by COVID-19, and whether any of those who were COVID-19 positive died, and also from which regions did they come from. I think the DG has this information and will be able to respond when we give him that chance. Otieno from KTN, the home-based care question, again, I will defer that to the DG. How many persons do we have who have been under home care, and what are the challenges that we may be facing with the home care-based approach that we have taken up? The second question was on contact tracing, where you said you think there seems to be an issue in terms of contact tracing. Now, contact tracing, I can tell you, is a very, very intensive undertaking, because it means that every individual who turns out positive must be interrogated in terms of the people that person has been close to, he or she has been associated with. That history must be obtained, either from the patient, or there are other ways also using technology that information can be obtained. Once that information has been obtained, each and every of those contacts must then be followed up and must be interrogated, must be quarantined if, and then they themselves must also give us who their contacts are. So it is like a cascade, like a tree that is branching off. You can see how intensive it is. It requires people who are trained in this work. We have rapid response teams under the emergency operation centers in every county that have been trained to do this kind of work. And contact tracing works very well in the early stages of the pandemic, when it has just entered the country and you are dealing with few numbers. You are able to easily follow them up to break the transmission cycles. The moment we now move into widespread transmission of the virus, what we call community transmission, then you can imagine that the numbers will swell, and therefore the multiple effect of the contact tracing is also quite a daunting exercise. So yes, I will not tell you there aren't challenges. Challenges will be there because you need people, you need logistics, you need to move people, you need to gather information, you need transport, you need airtime, you need all of those things to get people to get that. But the counties have their teams. We have these teams in all the counties, and I think they're applying their resources to the best ability to be able to do this follow-up and get the contacts. We may not get all the contacts, but we try to get the key contacts that we need to get a hold of. Gigi, if you have anything to add on contact tracing, maybe you can respond to that when you have the chance. Helen Aura of NTV, I know you have asked me this question before, and it has come up again. I mean, one test giving one result in one lab and then another result in other labs. We have to understand that we need to be very clear what we are comparing here. Do you know that this virus, when it is collected in what is called the virus transport medium, it is collected in that virus transport medium to keep the integrity of that virus, because that virus is an RNA virus that is packaged in a protein envelope. If that virus is not kept viable in that state and it disrupts, that nucleic acid is released and very quickly it disappears because it is chewed away by enzymes that we find all over the place. So there are very many things that one needs to look at. When you see a test failing, is it because of the way the sample was transported? Is it because of how that sample, when it was in the lab, was processed? Because once the sample comes to the lab, it has to be processed. You could lose that RNA in the processing. Is it because how long has the sample been around? I think we talked about that. The longer you keep a sample, its viability goes down and your chances of being able to pick up that nucleic acid also goes down. Then, of course, there are system errors in terms of the instruments that you use, their sensitivity, and so on, the controls you use. So there are very many factors. I just wanted to lay that down. But it is true that tests must be reproducible. If a lab has been approved and approved by the ministry, and we look at all of these things in approving a lab, we give them samples to test and return results before we approve them. And when we approve them, we expect that they will be able to produce the same results. So it is possible that anything could have gone wrong along those lines. What we also have on top of that to ensure that labs are producing the right results is we have a quality assurance system or protocols where we send samples to these labs from time to time just to check and see if they're doing the right thing. We are addressing this issue. It has come to our notice of certain labs where this is happening, and we are addressing it. We are re-evaluating those labs. If we do find that there has been some negligence, we will certainly take the necessary measures so that we don't get wrong results coming out from labs, because a wrong result in a disease like this can create a lot of anguish. Yes?
Just to clarify, you said one of the factors that could lead to the wrong results is either if a sample has taken too long. How long does it take for a sample to go bad?
Okay. If these samples are properly stored in the right media and they are kept frozen, they are good enough for quite a bit of time. I could say so that, you know, at least within 2-3 weeks you would still be able to get material to give you a good test. However, if they are transported not under the right conditions, for example, they have to be transported cold on ice when they're coming from the field. That's the cold chain. If that cold chain is not observed, then you will have a problem. Now, the other thing I need to say also is some of the reagents that are used for these tests are equally, they are biologicals, they are equally very labile. They also need to be stored under particular conditions. So if you have reagents that did not go through the proper supply chain, you're going to end up in problems of that nature. So there are very many variables that we look at. But I think the bottom line is that we do not, for approved labs that are in our quality assurance system, we expect that they will return the right results. If they don't return the right results, there is a process of review and there is a process of corrective and preventive actions that can be taken to ensure that those results do not happen again. Khayamba, you talked about the trend of what we are seeing and the numbers increasing. When you were asking us what we think our projections will be coming to July and August, what the cases will be like. Now, if we rely on models, and we have talked about models before, and how useful models can be and to what extent you can rely on them, but some of our models which have been geared towards the information that we have gathered during this pandemic tend to indicate that we may be approaching a peak sometime in July, August, and maybe up to September around there, we may be seeing our peak. The numbers we are seeing increasing are also indicating to us that the trajectory is changing a little bit. It seems to be rising. So it looks like coming, going forward, I think we are likely to see more samples turning positive. The number of samples we test also has an influence on the number of positives that we get. The more samples you test, of course you expect more positive. But over and above that, it's a fact that our numbers are increasing and we are rising. If the models are telling us what it's going to be, then we shall see around July, maybe July, August, we shall see our numbers really go up. You can see that during the month of June and now, our numbers have really increased, much more than they were before. So we seem to be on a rise on the curve, okay? But we cannot fully rely only on models. I think we have to get the real data, and models will help us to prepare ourselves, to prepare our capacities. And it is better for us to work with models that over-exaggerate for us, isn't it? And be over-prepared for our response than be under-prepared, because an improper response means many more people suffering and many more people dying. We don't want to be in that place. Nancy Aquaro, yours was the testing capacity in the country, 28 facilities. What about those counties that do not have any facilities? This testing that we do for COVID-19 is an intensive test that is also resource intensive in terms of what it requires. We have just talked about the supply chain, what it requires and all of that. It's not a simple test and it is resource intensive. The fact that we are able to actually do it in 28 facilities across the country is an achievement in itself, because to conduct these tests at those levels is quite a daunting exercise. And it is not necessary, while the desire may be there to have a testing facility in every county, it may not be necessary because the loads or the risks are different in the counties. And these 28 facilities are distributed throughout the country. They have the capacity to deal with samples from other counties that have a low risk and therefore a low number of samples that are coming in. So right now, I think in terms of capacity, we have good capacity to be able to do the testing. The constraints that are there for our testing will always remain the international supply chains that provide us with the reagents that we need to do the test. But lately, I think we have been in a good place, having fairly good, steady, and stable supplies that allow us to be able to ramp up our tests, and the numbers that we are doing, you can see, and therefore revealing more positives. HBC was your other question, and how many have actually recovered. I think the DG will respond to that. Ben of K24, you want to know the patient to healthcare worker ratio. I think DG might have that information. And you wanted to know also about these 3,519 samples, whether we collected these over the last 24 hours or some of them were carryover. I can say that most of these, because we did have a backlog some time back, and we did clear that backlog. So these samples are samples that have been collected over that period of time. In terms of where they come from several places throughout the counties, not all the counties, but I can tell you the major counties that we have collected these samples from. We have collected from Nairobi County, a very large number of samples, Mombasa County, Busia. These are the first 10 counties, high numbers. Busia, Kisii, Nakuru, Taita Taveta, Uasin Gishu, Garissa, Machakos, Turkana, Kajiado, Kilifi, and others. So we have the list of the samples that we have collected and from where. Okay. I think that responds to your question. Let me now hand over to the DG then to answer those questions that have been directed to him. DG.
Thanks, Waziri. First question was the number of healthcare workers who have been affected. Since we started reporting cases, the number is 186. Out of these, 102 are females and 84 are males, giving us a positivity ratio of 2.8%. And I'm glad to report that we have not lost a single healthcare worker to COVID-19 disease. And the latest reports of healthcare workers who tested positive were from Shalom Hospital in Athi River, and even those ones are doing very well under care. And I want to assure you again that with the capacity building that we have done and availability of personal protective equipment, as we continue to battle the pandemic, we are learning more and important lessons, and therefore that is why you're seeing the number of healthcare workers who have been exposed is fairly low. Remember, even in the developed countries like Italy and Spain, they lost a sizable number of their healthcare workers in the early phase of the pandemic. The question of home-based care asked by Otieno and Nancy Okwara. Yes, we told you that in the previous bulletin that WHO developed guidance or guidelines on home-based care, which we customized locally using our case management teams based on certain agreed parameters. And as we had reported previously, there's a very strict criteria to be used for home-based care, so that we only release you if you know you meet that set criteria. And that is to ensure that you don't pose danger to your immediate family members and the rest of the population. So as we go forward, you'll see the number of people coming for home-based care increased, but the increment will be in a judicious and a cautious manner. So as at now, we have had about 600 people in home-based care, and about 120 have been discharged from home-based care. And again, I'm glad to inform you that we have not lost a single person who was under home-based care management. That tells you that the criteria is very strict. But some of the challenges we face with home-based care, of course, it tends to apply more to those in the middle class and upper middle class, because those who come from the informal settlements, it is practically impossible to undertake home-based care. It is also labor-intensive because it requires somebody to be able to visit these people, to check their temperature, to ask for their symptomatology. The other challenge we face, of course, is also in terms of delayed reporting, especially if you are to get data from the counties. So you'll find our numbers, there will be a lag in terms of reporting, because I have to wait for data from Kachaliba in West Pokot before I can be able to tell you the numbers. So those are some of the challenges we face with home-based care. But we are confident, because this is an undertaking that we had applied previously, especially in the HIV pandemic, and it served us well. Based on that, and also because of the capacity building and sensitization that we have done to the community health volunteers and the healthcare workers, we are confident that we can pull this off without posing danger to immediate family members and the rest of the society. There was a question about integrity of the tests. Beyond what Waziri said, of course, we are also doing what we call EQA, external quality assurance, so that whatever Lab A gives is what we expect Lab B to be able to give. So we are doing capacity building of our laboratory specialists in terms of sample collection, in terms of sample transportation, in terms of sample processing, and of course reporting and archiving of the samples that we will need to use in the future. Haemba talked of the numbers. Yes, as we approach the peak, you'll see an increase in cases reported. And until we reach that level, it is very difficult to be able to predict when that is going to occur. But based, of course, on the modeling, we are saying August, September, but nobody knows for sure, because nature sometimes does not obey science. In terms of our testing capacity, we don't require to have a testing capacity in each and every place. What we need to have is a functional sample referral system, that a sample can be able to move from the far-flung parts of Turkana and Nadapal to Moi Teaching Referral Hospital. Within the agreed time framework, it is analyzed and the report is submitted. So far, the capacity that we have has worked very well for us. The challenges that we have had is in terms of the kits and the reagents. But as at now, I think we have about 150,000 test kits. So we can be able to test around 150,000 people going forward. And beginning tomorrow, you'll see again the number of people tested increase significantly. The healthcare worker patient ratio, yes, this has been a challenge for us. You remember when His Excellency the President announced that universal health coverage was one of the big four agenda. And to be able to address this as part of our preparedness, we are trying to recruit extra staff for not only for COVID but beyond COVID, the post-COVID era. And this challenge will be here with us for a while. But work is in progress, I think, in terms of recruitment of the initial 5,000 healthcare workers, which was increased to 8,500. I think we are close to 5,000. Then we had another 1,000 healthcare workers to be recruited under the COVID preparedness. Again, the interviews have been done by the Public Service Commission. We are also recruiting an additional 50 public health officers, especially to support us in our border towns, especially Kajiado, that is Namanga, Busia in Malaba, and also Isebania in Migori. So as you journey towards achieving the WHO required standards, it will take a bit of time, but I believe we are on target. The samples that we collected, that we have reported today, are samples that were collected in the first 24 hours, because, as Waziri said, we had cleared the backlog of what we had previously. And going forward for the next 15, 20 days, we should not have a problem because we have adequate stocks of testing kits and reagents. And to the doctors in the house, happy Doctors' Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
In 2016, Lotto Foundation embarked on a journey to lend a helping hand to Kenyans. Kenyans who want to be strong.